guys. I'm outspoken, and I'm also passionate about homelessness. For me, my vision of homelessness is chaos, controlled chaos. Also complexity, interconnectedness, and community. So when you look at this painting, I think you'll see some of those same themes echoed. This painting, in fact, is called Homeless, and it was done by Laura Tenier, who in fact was homeless, and she was my friend. I met Laura in 2003 when I went to live on the streets for 72 hours. No money, no credit card, no cell phone. Pretty dumb, or pretty scary. There were a group of us, and we were dropped off downtown. The first night, I slept in an alley that had a gate on it, sort of a decorative gate, more attractive than secure, and I froze. It was like a wind tunnel. I didn't want to carry a sleeping bag, so I carried a little fleece SpongeBob kitty blanket, and I wrapped myself into the smallest ball you can ever imagine, and I'm not that small, but I tried to survive the night. The next morning I thought, you know, if I'm on the streets, I'm on the streets, and I want to be with homeless people. So I went to the guys who slept in the park that night and hung out with homeless guys, dumpster diving, and I went up to them and I said, I want to be with you tonight. Dead silence. They looked at each other and thought, now what in the world are we going to do with this 60-something-year-old woman? At that point, Laura Tenier, the painter, who I didn't know, came up to me and said, don't go with them, you come with me. And I asked her why, and her answer stunned me. She said, they use bad language. Now, Laura didn't know that I was a grandmother, head of a school, but somehow she sensed that I would be offended by the roughness. So she invited me to come with her, and I did. We didn't know each other. She took me to her secret place where she lived, and for homeless people, all of their places are secret, for privacy reasons, for security reasons. Her secret place was the second-floor porch of an abandoned house, and she invited me to sleep on the first-floor porch of the same house. And she gave me two precious gifts, which may not sound amazing to you, but they were to me. The first gift was a big piece of cardboard to use as a mattress. The second gift was an empty peanut butter jar to pee in. Confessions. I used the cardboard. That was it. So that night I slept on the first floor porch. It was a little bit warmer than the wind tunnel. And the next morning, very early, homeless people get up very early so they won't be detected or get a ticket for camping. The next morning she gave me a stack of papers about this big. And she asked me to read it. And what it was her autobiography, written in pencil on copy paper, and I obliged, I did it. So the next day and into the next night under the streetlights, I read her autobiography. And it was unique indeed. Laura grew up in a crowded Hogan on a reservation. Her job was to tend the sheep. But her parents and her extended family realized that she was not like other children, other youth. She was exceedingly bright, as you can see in the painting. She had many talents. And what they hoped was that she would go off and learn about technology and come back and teach her people. In addition, Laura was transgender. So she left her reservation, she came to Austin, and she lived on the streets. Laura's life on the streets were amazing. In addition to writing that thick autobiography, she wrote a novel set in the Ice Age. She received a degree in engineering from UT. Can you imagine that? and she got a grant from a national organization, an arts organization for writers, and they sent her to Dallas for a week. She took a bus there. She stayed in an upscale hotel instead of her second-floor porch of an abandoned building. She ate banquet food for 5 days instead of standing in line at a food truck or a soup kitchen. She talked to other writers for 5 days. When she came back, she told me it was the best week of her life. So despite her many talents in writing and painting and geometry and science, technology, Laura didn't fit into a mold like so many of us. Being homeless for a long time, she had trouble fitting into the rules of our society. She got a job for a part-time in a lab, but that didn't work out. After 2 years, she got public housing, but that didn't work out either because she invited all other homeless friends to stay with her, which is against the public housing rule, but she knew they needed housing. So they evicted her. Amazingly, she bore no grudge. She went back to live on the streets. Living on the streets is really, really hard for body and for mind. And Laura suffered a stroke prematurely. And I'm sorry to say she's no longer with us. But Laura taught me so much about what it means to be homeless and what it means to be human. So living on the streets just for that first 72 hours, I found myself going back again and again and again. Sometimes for a weekend, sometimes longer, sometimes for a day or a couple hours. And as a 70-year-old plus lady, I'm still going out on the streets, not necessarily sleeping there anymore, although I do sleep with men at freeze nights. But I'm on the streets probably 2 days a week, just being among homeless people. And what I found is that there's many reasons they're on the streets. All their stories are individual, as we heard from our first speaker this morning. But there's a commonality of why they're on the streets. So they may have been abandoned by their family. They may have been abused by their family and left on their own. They may have been released from prison and had no place to go. They were in prison too long. They had no friends, no family left. They may have been challenged intellectually or physically. It's amazing how many wheelchairs and walkers and canes you see on the streets. Some of them were intellectually challenged as well. Some of them, as I'm sure you know or imagine, are addicted to drugs or alcohol. Some are on a waiting list for permanent housing, which can take years. So they're just hanging in there, waiting for that. Some have no job training or limited amounts of education, unlike most of you with your education. And some just want to be on the streets because that's all they know. They may have been there 10 years, 20 years. They can't imagine any other life. And hard though it may be, they value their independence. So that's why so many of our homeless people are out there. You may be thinking, well, who are they? Who are these homeless people? Well, they're very much like us. They are us. They're men, women, children, teens, seniors. They're all nations, nationalities, all religions, all ethnic groups, all cultural groups. And like us, they're all different. Some are funny. Some are serious. Some are givers, some are takers. Some are lighthearted and you just want to be around them. And some are more like Eeyore, and they're grumpy and you don't want to be around them. All of them, at one time or another, are lonely. Because being on the streets, you don't have a family around you. And most often, you don't have friends around you. Or you might have one or two friends. So they're lonely at times. A great many of them that I've met, many, They have a belief in a higher power, whatever they call it. They're very much faith-filled. And the reason they are is because their lives are so desperate. They don't know where their next meal will come from, where they'll sleep, where they'll store their stuff. Their life is precarious, and they have to have someone who they can turn to or something to turn to that gives them some sort of hope. And the last thing that I've noticed from meeting homeless people for years and years and years is just like every one of us in this room, in the world, every homeless person wants to believe that they're loved. So you may be thinking, where do they live? You see them during the day. You see them flying signs on the corner. You see them in lines at the soup kitchens. Where do they live? Homeless people are much more creative, and I wager much more thoughtful than most of us in this room. They know how to do things that we don't know how to do. So they may sleep in their car. They might need their car for a job. They might sleep in an alley. They might sleep on a rooftop of a second or third story building. They might sleep in the woods, with a tent or without a tent. They might sleep in an abandoned building like Laura. They might sleep in a construction site. They might sleep in cardboard boxes. They might sleep for a night in a shelter, if they're lucky. Or they might surf on someone's sofa, if they're lucky. They might sleep in park benches. They might sleep on sidewalks. And there's an incredible creative group that builds their own houses. I call them patchwork houses. They're made of cardboard, things that are found in dumpsters and tarps and shopping carts. And some of these little houses even have 2 rooms. And most often you'll find them under bridges or under overpasses, some quite close to where I live. So I look at these 2 young people, like the young people here, and I think, why in the world, with everything that you have in your lives, why are we talking about homelessness? We are because we belong to the family of man. And how we treat the least among us determines who we are as a society, as a state, as individuals. Moreover, it may be hard to believe, but every one of us in this room today, at some time or another, us, our families, a member of our family, or our friends may experience homelessness due to an accident, an illness, loss of a job, or addiction. Notice how young they are. So I've thrown this at you, and you might be saying, well, what in the world do we do? Because it is a problem. The first thing we have to do, or I ask you to do, is to acknowledge that homelessness is an issue. It exists. It exists in our city, in our state, in our country. And after we acknowledge that, I would ask you to look at homelessness as individuals, not as a number in a study. Each person on the street is an individual, just like we are. Don't look at them like a number in a study or a stranger on a street corner flying a sign. And then when you get your mind set on that, I ask you to have some goals. How do we make this happen? How do we help? I think the most important thing is to let the homeless people see you seeing them. When I was on the streets many times, and I'm telling you, after 24 hours, I looked homeless. The thing that was hardest for me was not wondering where I would eat, where I would sleep, or carrying my backpack. The hardest thing for me was people not giving me eye contact, ignoring me, pretending I was a tree or a statue, just no human contact, essentially dissing me. So I would ask that when you see a homeless person in your car or on the street, the first thing you do is reach out to them, let them know you see them. And you can do this in simple ways. Wave to them, smile, say, hi, how's your day going? If it's on the street, give them a handshake. And then think about their shoes. And if it's a cold morning, like this morning, give them a cup of coffee. If it's a hot afternoon, hand them a bottle of water. At any season, any time, give them socks. Because if you're on your feet all day, your socks wear out. And there's no place you can get used socks. Nobody accepts used socks. So now I'm looking at this last picture, homeless, and I'm looking at you all in this room with your incredible education. I've been talking to some of the young people, and you're so fortunate with your education and your families. And I realize that in a few short years, you will be the leaders of our world, not me. I'm about to give up the reins. I'm going to give them to you. And you will have many issues to face, among them homelessness. So I would urge you to learn all you can about it. Read books. See film clips. Use your hands. Get them dirty. Volunteer. But most important thing is to get to know one homeless person and see the world through her eyes or his eyes, as I did with Laura. And I guarantee you it will change your life as it changed my life. And then 2 goals I urge you to have. The first one is treat homeless people that you see everywhere as you would wish to be treated, with respect. It sounds simple, but that's the basis of how we will change the world. And maybe we'll be the change makers in this room with a simple little thing. Just treat them with respect. The second thing I would ask you is, your second goal is to make a difference. Now, only you know what that means. I don't know how you will make a difference in this world. But I do know it means being present. It means being a problem solver. And it means thinking about how I can help people have a better life, whether they have homes or whether they're homeless. I believe in all of you. I'm behind you all the way. Thank you.